This is the danger of a war mentality. If you have a war going on overseas, you know, you're supposed to sacrifice your liberties. If you have a war against terrorism, which is a very, very vague, undefinable term, I wonder if that involves McVeigh and others. Terrorism is just a tactic, but they want us to believe that there's this perpetual war, this perpetual enemy, so we become, you know, incensed with fear, and that we're willing to give up our liberties. Let me tell you, there's never room to give up liberty to be secure. This would be, first, we would be safer. We could rebuild our military equipment and get our army updated once again. But the magnificent thing is, we could save a lot of money, and we have to. All the great empires throughout history always went down the tube, not because they were defeated by an invading force. The most recent one, the Soviets, here they had 40,000 nuclear missiles and weapons, and we didn't have to have a war. They collapsed internally because they didn't have a viable economic system. It tends to be that people, the empires spread themselves too thinly around the world, and that's what's happening to us. We're too far. We're in 130 countries. We have 700 bases, and we're expanding it. At the same time, we tear our bases down here at home. We need to reverse that. We need to reverse the economic spending attitude that we have. We as a people are taxed to go over there and destroy a country, bomb it, and destroy their bridges and their infrastructure. Then we're taxed to rebuild it. And at the same time, our bridges are falling down in this country. It's time to reverse that and take care of ourselves. Policy, I believe it's the easiest place to come up with a consensus, to bring the troops home, live within the Constitution, don't get into nation building, have a stronger national defense, and save a lot of money. Enough money where you can actually cut down on the deficit. But it also means that we would then have funds to take care of those individuals who have become dependent. We have a lot of programs that technically should have never been started, but a lot of people are dependent. And we can't start there, and that too often is what they're trying to do. They attack veterans programs and educational programs and medical programs here at home. We don't even come up with the cost of living for the elderly under Social Security. They claim that I'm not to destroy Social Security, yet really this program is the only one that can save it, or at least tide us over. At the same time, if we would only cut the spending overseas, we could tide people over who are dependent. We could finally get around to having a monetary policy where we wouldn't have inflation. At the same time, we could offer a real opportunity for the young people to get into a transitional program, and that is, let's allow the next generation to opt out of the Social Security system. If we don't do it, we will have an economic calamity, and I believe we're on the verge of it. There's never been a country that has fought wars and promoted themselves as we have without destroying the currency. So the biggest news today is a reflection of all these policies, the domestic, overseas, the foreign policy, the welfare system, the whole work. The best measurement of this is the value of a nation's currency, and our dollar is getting weaker and weaker. And some claim this is to our advantage, but believe me, the argument they give you for a weak currency doesn't exist. Is there any sense to it if I come in and say, what we want to do is weaken your dollar? So every dollar you have in your pocket, what I want to do is make it worth 90 cents this year and 80 cents next year. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, and yet some people use that as an argument that they want to purposely weaken our dollar. But it's a sign of a nation that is going downhill. We now can't afford either our foreign policy or our domestic policy without borrowing from overseas. We have to borrow from China to keep the war going. They can bring us to knees. They don't have to invade us. All they have to do is buy us because they have more dollars. Today, what happened, Citicorp, essentially bankrupt. And the markets were joyous because the Fed couldn't even bail out Citicorp. They had to go to Dubai. Dubai comes over here and supports the tune of like $8 or $9 billion and injects that into our banking system. That is how dependent we have become on foreigners for our borrowing opportunities. And we can't blame them. We have to blame ourselves because we've lived beyond our means. Our current account deficit today, the measurement of how much we have to borrow beyond what we produce is $800 billion a year. And yet there seems to be still a lot of prosperity, but the prosperity is all built on borrowed money. Individuals, corporations, government, and where's our productive capacity? That's the real threat. Our productive jobs have gone overseas because of this overspending and the monetary policy, over taxes, over regulation, and actually other policies that have encouraged our businesses to go overseas because, of course, now big business is part of this globalism and they don't think of it in terms of national sovereignty. I still believe in national sovereignty. One of the things that we've put up with for a long time, and something I've been talking about ever since I first got involved in politics, and that's 30-some years ago, that has to do with the issue of money. I mean, as long as we allow our governments to spend endlessly, and then tax to the hilt until they can't tax anymore, and then borrow to the hilt until they can't borrow anymore, why in thunder should we allow our governments to, when they come up short, just to print the money? It makes no sense whatsoever to me. So, under these circumstances, what do? We look at how this was created. Of course, we know it was created in 1913. And it's the reason I talk about it a lot, and my position is very clear. It's time to get rid of the Federal Reserve System. When a currency is deliberately destroyed, it usually at the end stages gets out of control when it goes, and the dollar or the currency goes down rapidly. But in the meantime, there's a systematic transfer of wealth, and the wealth goes from the middle class to the wealthy, and the poor just suffer the problems of inflation, because inflation is literally a tax. You print the money, the value goes down, your prices go up, that is a tax. Well, what do they do for the elderly? They give them a 2% increase and said it's only a 2% inflation rate when it's 10 or 12 or 15% that you're losing. And that's why the standard of living is going down. And this is why right now, today, even in the last year since this campaign has started, the economic conditions has deteriorated. I mean, the number of people, the percentage of people right now concerned about the economy is probably 75%. So that means there's a serious problem ahead, and we have to face up to it. But believe me, the problems are clear, and we understand how we got there, and the solution is not that difficult. We got there because we didn't obey the Constitution. We can solve our problems by obeying the Constitution. Unless we do something rather quickly, we will be facing a crisis, and when we do, then of course our liberties will be even more threatened. But they generally use so many tactics to get us worried and fearful so that we go to the government, and the government's supposed to take care of us. That's the incentive for the welfare system and socialism. Only government can take care of us. And then after 9/11, it was an opportunity for so many of the neoconservatives to say, aha! And they literally wrote about an opportunity where they could promote their agenda. I mean, it wasn't after 9/11 that they thought about invading Iraq. That had been going on for quite a few years. As a matter of fact, it was established in 1998 under Clinton. You know, that the purpose was to overthrow that regime. And that was a virtual declaration of war that early on. So they were really just waiting for an opportunity. But when these wars go on, it sets the stage where the people become fearful and they're too willing to sacrifice their liberties. And just look at what's happened since 9/11. Shortly thereafter, there was one particular piece of legislation that I strongly opposed, fought against, and voted against, and that is the Patriot Act. We don't need the Patriot Act.